Good morning, everyone. Welcome to this session with me, Kate from What Kate Made. Um, we are going to today look at some stenciling. Very simple. Um, Several strands to this that are interesting to me is that it's quite a lot of upcycling involved. I do like working with a bit of acrylic paint. It's also got uh, lots and lots of different techniques today. So what we're going to do is do some stenciling with paper doilies, which, widely available everywhere. I have lovely patterns on them. And what I'm going to stencil onto are some old placemats. Now, they're the cork-backed ones that have a sort of vinyl pattern on. I recently redecorated my dining room, so all the colours changed. So I haven't got my the same. I don't use them now, and I thought, no, I'll remake them into the colour scheme that I've now got in the dining room. So rather than throw them away, they're not as practical as the ones you buy, because obviously the surface, you need to put lots and lots of layers of varnish on them if you want to put hot plates and things like that on them. But I'm sorry, I'm sounding a bit hesitant. I got caught on the hop a bit, and I'm trying to get your live feed up, but I've got it now, so I'll be able to see all your comments. So if you're out there, drop me a line, give me a wave, say hi, tell me what the weather's like. Now we had a lovely day yesterday, but it's slightly overcast today, but it's still lovely and warm. So as a consequence, the windows are open, and you might hear a bit of noise. We've got a lot of tractors going up and down our road today. Right, back to what we're going to do today. So I've done several versions, because one of the hazards of doing something like stenciling on a live demo is that your paint has to dry, so there are inevitably big long gaps in between. But this is the coaster I've done that's completed. I don't know whether you can see that. So what I've done is I've done the paper doily pattern with white paint. My colour scheme is olive green, white and grey. I'm trying to get this. It's the lights are a little bit difficult. Oh, that's better. You can see the colours a bit better now. So I've done my basic stencil with white, and then I've added touches of green and grey. The grey is not that obvious. These little dots here, they're in grey, and I've added touches of green and grey to just break up the white. You don't have to do that. You could just leave it white. I'll show you the one. This is the one I'm going to decorate later after I've demonstrated the stenciling. So that's the stencil one. But first of all, I want to have a quick chat about preparation, because this is the blank placemat. These were, as I say, I had like a vinyl coating on with a pattern. They were blue and grey. So what I did was, to prepare this, I sanded it down just lightly, just enough to provide a slightly rough surface on the vinyl. Then I give it a couple of undercoats of a base coat. I actually used white because I had white emulsion, but it would have been better when I realised the colour I was going to put on top. It would have been better with a darker one. So any bits of emulsion that you've got lying about are great. And then I give it a final top coat in the acrylic that I'm going to use, acrylic paints. I didn't give you a show through of equipment, which I normally do. So, well, anyway, that's how I prepared the placemat. So you can do that with placemats or coasters. What else have I got here? I've got a selection of brushes. I've got a sponge brush, that's to do the actual stenciling with. I find that is better for getting in all the crevices. And I've got 3 other brushes. So I've got a wash brush, that's the one I use to put the top coat on. I've got a narrow round brush, which I'm going to use for my green highlights. And this brush, I'm going to just use the end because it's got a tiny end, and I'm going to do the dots with that. I've got, this is a plastic food tray. I think it was ham in it. But it's got a nice smooth base. The ones that with ridges are no good, but this is great. I just use that as a paint palette. So again, I'm reusing, recycling, and it can be washed and reused. I've got acrylic paints. So what I've got here are Crafters acrylic paints. You get various different makes. They come in these little tubes. I've got forest green and grey and white. So what I did was I mixed all 3 of them together to get my olive green to do the top coat with. Word of caution, if you're doing that, mix a big batch, because if you run out, you're never going to mix it the same. If you don't mind a sort of mottled effect, then that's fine, but you need to mix quite a big batch, enough to cover all of your surface. So those are my paints, brushes, water, kitchen roll. That's all you need. Oh, and your stencil. Now, paper doilies you can buy anywhere. They're great. When I started to prep for this on Tuesday, I realised I hadn't got any, and I wasn't going anywhere where I could get any. So I thought I'll just order some online. I know. And what I thought were paper doilies in a pack, by happy coincidence, were actually paper doily stencils. So they're plastic. They're great. They're absolutely perfect for this job. But ordinary paper doilies will do just as well. The usual paper doilies you buy for cakes usually have a centre that is solid. So if you wanted to make your centre a little bit more decorative, you could fold it into quarters and then in half again, so that would be eighths. Just snip a couple of little shapes out of the side edges, and you'll get a nice pattern in the middle then. So my stencil that I've used is this one, which is quite pretty. It's got this series of little dots, which I did dot over. That's what I use for my dot pattern. When you're doing your patterning, it's just a case of whatever you think looks right. It's up to you. It's personal. What I would recommend you do is do a practice. Now that's the whole doily. That's just on a piece of cardboard. Probably the packaging that my doilies arrived in. So you can see there, I've had a practice. A few bits went wrong, but it's quite good to practice your stenciling technique before you actually go on to your finished product. However, if you do make a mess of it, it's only paint. Just paint over it and start again. But it does take a while to dry in between, so it's worth taking your time and having a practice. I don't seem to have got any comments yet. Is anybody out there? Now, I'm going to turn the camera down, because then you can see what I'm doing better. So if you just bear with me a second. Right, so this is my blank placemat. With the stencil, you can position it wherever you want it. I mean, really, if you turn it, because it's round, it doesn't really matter which way, whether it's which way it's turned. Good tip: if you have some low tack masking tape, tape it down on the corners. I haven't got any. My husband has been decorating, as I said, and has used it all, and I didn't realise he'd used it all. So for me, because this is plastic, it sticks quite well. It doesn't move much, but your paper doily will move a lot. So you need to either tack it down with low tack masking tape, like I said, or with blue tack. You don't have to do the whole stencil. You could do it a corner and another corner, however you fancy, but just decide what you want to do first. Have a practice on a piece of cardboard, and then when you're ready, tack your stencil down. I'll just pop that to one side. So I'm going to do mine in the white paint. So I'll give it a good shake and blob a generous amount of white paint into one corner. Then with my sponge brush, I'm just going to work it into the brush a little bit. You don't want to overload it, because if you do, it'll go into underneath the bits you want to mask out. But this is quite a good, sponge brushes are quite good for that. Right, so back to our design. I'm going to hold mine down. So starting in the center, just pat with your sponge. Now this has got a lot of little holes in it, so we do want to make sure we go into those holes. Just bear with me a minute, because I think my sponge brush is a bit wet. I'm going to just dry it off, otherwise it'll seep everywhere. I washed this last night after I'd practiced yesterday, and I've forgotten to give it a squeeze with the paper towel. So that's a bit better. You don't want your your paint to be too diluted, otherwise it seeps under the blocked out bits. So that, oh yeah, that's better. So you just carry on working outwards from the centre, sort of dab in. You can dab and then stroke if you don't want, because otherwise you'll get, if you just dab, you get kind of like sponge marks, but a stippled effect. If that's what you want, that's fine. And if not, just, as I say, just brush over it in a brushing movement. And but you do want to work all the way around, getting in all the nooks and crannies. It's quite easy to miss them out. So if you've got masking tape, obviously, or blue tack or something holding your paper doily down, obviously you won't have the problem of trying to hold it as you're working. But as I say, the decorating took priority. No, I found with these plastic ones, once they're down and you start putting paint on, they do stay still. It's almost like the paint holds them in place. Now, as I say, this is a great way of using up something that you'll probably just either stick in the back of a cupboard or throw away, your old coasters and placemats. And I had quite a stack of old placemats. I'm very reluctant to throw anything away. I'm terrible. I'm a terrible hoarder. Usually I send things to charity shops instead. I'm just going to need some more paint. Just use quite a bit of paint. The acrylics I've got at the moment, I built up a collection over quite a few years, and then as they were all sort of like half finished, I just bought a big pack of assorted colours. So it's proving very useful. And of course, the beauty of acrylics is that they're water soluble. Well, that's one advantage and one disadvantage with this. One advantage is that they are water soluble, so you can wash your brushes clean. You don't need turpentine or anything like that. But the other disadvantage is the water soluble. So if they get wet, then there is a danger that they will come off. However, in this case, we're going to, well, I'm not going to today, but you can varnish them. I would recommend that you use several layers of clear varnish on the top. Not only does it prevent water getting through, but it also protects your paint against just wear and tear. And so you can see it's starting to build up now. If you want a really sharp defined pattern, you can always put another layer on. Leave this one to dry and then put another layer. But I quite like the sort of shabby chic look you get with stenciling, which a lot of people do. That's why they use it. But nearly done, so you can see I'm trying getting all the nooks and crannies. Quite therapeutic, this. It's very mindful. Not for me today because I'm talking to you, but if you're doing it on your own with some music playing in the background, it's quite soothing. We've been joined by my little dog, who's just it's a little old chap. He's a Shih Tzu, 11-year-old, and he just follows me around and goes to sleep wherever I am. It's not like he's very good company though. Right, so that's all of my stencil. I'm just going to give it a light brush to get rid of some of the stippled effect. Now this is the point at which I have to switch to the here's one I've done earlier, because this needs to dry. It doesn't need to be dry when you take the stencil off, but you do need to leave it to dry. So I'm going to start at one corner, and now this is easier for me with the plastic. You need to be more gentle with it with a paper doily. I'm just going to put that to one side. So you can see my design has come out really quite clearly. It's a little bit fuzzy in the middle. That's when my brush was a little bit wet when I started. So it is a little bit fuzzy. I'm just going to say hi to Jeanette. Where did I purchase my stencil? I'm ashamed to say I purchased from a certain Chinese website. That shall remain nameless. I'm not ashamed of it. I buy a lot of stuff from them, but there are concerns about people purchasing cheap things from China. But Yeah, I bought them there. Right, so that's your basic stencil done. Just let me mop up all my spills. I've got water everywhere now. We're going to move on now to the decorating. As I said, I chose the colours to match my dining room. I probably won't do a full set of these because I don't think they'll be as hard wearing, but they are quite decorative. So what I might do is leave them in the centre of the table or something like that. Now I'm going to move on to the paintbrushes now. I'm going to use the same palette. Let me just move that. This is the dry one, by the way. Nearly dry. I did it last night. It isn't the dry one. I've not swapped them over. I thought it was a bit. I've smudged it even more now. As you can see, this is the dry one. And I have practiced because I've done quite a few testers. I have got better, so that one's not smudged at all. So I'm going to use for my highlights. I'm going to use this one, which is the dark forest green. Let me just move it to one side. So I'm going to squidge a bit of that there. And I'm going to use this grey, but I'm going to lighten it a bit because I did find, if we look at the coaster that I did, the grey doesn't really stand out because it's quite dark when it dries. So I'm going to put on some grey paint and add some white to it. About half as much white as grey. Doesn't want to come out now. Just give it a shake. Right. And then I shall use my my wash brush to mix them. Can you see that? Yeah. So I'm just lightening the grey a little bit, mixing them together, and then I'll scrape that off because I'm not actually going to use that brush, but it is good for mixing. So using my round brush, I'm going to start and highlight certain elements now. So what I decided to highlight were these arcs. So there's the outer one, there's the inner one there. So I'm going to do that on each one, sorry, in the dark forest green. So just gently, and you can rest your hand on it because it's dry. I would recommend you wait till it dries. And you want to just let your brush splay out wide enough so that it covers the whole arc. Really, the best idea is probably to load your brush up with enough to go all the way to the end in one stroke, but it's not always easy to judge what it is, how much you need. And I don't know whether you can see. I'll do one at this side because I'm conscious my hand's going in front of myself. If you press down with your brush so you get a wider band, and then just do the whole arc. We're not looking at it being like perfect because we want this sort of shabby chic look. And as I'm looking at that dark green on there, I think that is a bit dark. It's melding in with the background. So I'm going to add a little bit of white to it. So it's a bit lighter. I think on my test one, I used a lighter green. You can just paint over the one you've already done. It's not the end of the world. I think that's going to be still a bit too close to this background colour. I'm going to end up with loads of it. I'll have to do loads of when you're mixing paints, you want to mix enough so that you've got enough to do the whole of whatever it is you want to do. But sometimes you end up mixing more than you need and then you've got it left over, but you must paint something else with it. It will dry quite rapidly once it's out on the palette. So good idea might be if you've got little lidded pots that like you get dips and things in, might you could put it in that, and so that's better. That's showing better. So I'm going over these arcs that are around the edge. Another word, when I was researching this, I came across several other methods, one of which was using a Sharpie pen instead of paint, which, if you're not confident with paint, is quite a good idea. Still using it as a stencil. And another one was using like a watercolor effect. So you were putting slightly damp in your paper and then adding paint, and it kind of spread. Don't know whether they were using a different sort of surface. They probably were. It was probably done on paper. That wouldn't work on this because it's not an absorbent surface. But the Sharpies would definitely work. Again, you'd have to prepare your surface properly. So as you can see, I'm working my way around. Actually, that won't work better, so it might be better if I turn this as I go. It's just finding the angle. That's why practice is always a good idea. You get your skills, you know, you'll find out what works and what doesn't work, but you won't be ruining your finished article. There we go. I think as your hand gets steadier as well as you go. And then I will do these inner arcs. These are slightly narrower, so I don't want to press quite so hard with my brush. Doesn't matter if the white still shows through. It adds a little bit of an interest to it. So that's that. I'm not going to carry on because obviously time is passing. But if I show you back to my practice, you can see that these leaf shapes are coloured in green and these petal shapes are coloured in green. I didn't do the outer arcs on this one, but then decided I would. So the green, I've just had a message up from Pippa. Pippa's just turned on because she saw I was on, has no idea what I'm doing. What I'm doing is stenciling, recycling and stenciling a placemat, Pippa. When we finish, go back to where the beginning and watch the bit you missed. Right, so the next thing I'm going to do is the dots. Now you can see part of the pattern has dots here, which I'm going to leave those because they're quite nice. But some of the other things I'm going to put dots on. Now these little shapes, let me lift it up a bit closer. These little shapes that are like, I think they look like a egg timer sort of shape. I'm going to put dots of grey in them. So what I'm doing, I don't know if you can see that. What I'm doing is I'm getting the paint on the end of my paintbrush, and I picked this one because it's got quite a small end. And then I'm going to just put a dot in the middle. You might not be able to see this, but I'll hold it up later. In the middle of each of those little sort of egg timer shapes. Hourglass, I suppose it is, isn't it? And I'm going to do that all the way around the outside edge. Not getting enough paint on really. You have to kind of renew the paint quite a lot when you're dotting. Usually you can get two. I'll just do one more section and then I'll lift it up and show you. So there we go. Let me lift that up and show you. I don't know whether you can see it close to. Can you see? Tiny dots. Now, I was saying before about Sharpies. So if you bear with me, I'm going to show you something else. So as well as Sharpies, you could use acrylic paint markers. Now, I've got some here. I've just remembered. This is a metallic green. Now this has got, because it's quite a good match. I haven't used these in a while, so I'll need to just refresh them. Yes, they're working. So I'll go on to my tester and see what it looks like. So what I'm going to do is colour a section like that. I think I quite like that. I've also got this one, which I think is a metallic grey, and we'll see what that looks like. That's a bit dark. I've got gold. Oh yes, I like that one. We might use that to do some highlights as well. Right. Okay. So I'm going to go back to this green one. And I'm going to look at these petal shapes, sort of teardrop shapes. There's 2 rows. There's an inner and an outer. So the inner ones, the outer ones, sorry, I'm going to just colour in using my metallic marker pen. So these are just like acrylic paint in a marker. I have a set of different colours that are quite good. Now, as you can see, if you're not great with a brush, this is much easier. I don't know why I didn't think of this in the first place. But as I say, you do these things. You start off with one idea in mind, and this is the beauty of crafting. And it morphs into something completely different. I do quite a lot of workshops here at home, so, you know, in-person workshops. And I will set off with an idea in mind and practice it and think, yeah, that's what I want to do. And then when I come to do the workshop, I'm constantly astounded and amazed but at the ideas other people come up with, because everybody's brain works differently and everybody sees it differently. We don't all see an idea in the same way, and it's really, really stimulating to work with other people and find out how they think. So should we try the gold on those inner ones? This is going to come out completely different to what I intended it to, but that's fine. And the beauty of the white underneath is any colour you put on top of it does show really well. If we were putting this on top of the green, it would not look the same. Although it's not a very good gold, this. I think it's a bit yellow. But it was just what I grabbed. Another thing you could use, which I have as well, and if I can see, oh, it's there. I'm going to show you it as well. It's gold leaf. It's not real gold leaf. It's mine's fake gold, because obviously real gold leaf is quite expensive and difficult to work with. But I'll show you that. So if I'm quick, it'll stick to that before it dries. So this is my gold leaf. It came in a pack like this. It's not real gold, it's gilding paper. So in this pack I've got, this is like a powder, and that comes in 3 colours. So you would scatter that on like glitter. But the actual leaf comes in sheets. And each sheet is between, can you see how fine it is? It's between 2 sheets of tissue to stop it sticking together. Again, that one wasn't from that particular Chinese website, that was from Amazon. Let me have a think what I'm going to use. Don't want anything wet because that will make the whole thing disastrous. I'm just going to dry off one of the paintbrushes and use, I'll get a clean paintbrush and use the end again, so it doesn't really matter which brush I get. Although I do want one with a fairly narrow end. Right, so I've got a paintbrush. I'm going to use that, hopefully, if my bits are still wet. You just put it on and brush it. And it's, no, they're not wet enough. Let me try. Ooh, see what I mean about it being very fragile? We'll maybe try with a smaller piece. I'll go over that gold again, make it wet, and it should stick then. See, going off piece doesn't always work. Once it's a sweaty day today as well because it's warm, so it's sticking. So once you can just, yep, there we go. The dry brush will lift it quite easily, and we could put that bit on the next one. Again, I'm going to need to make a surface. You need a sort of gluey surface for it to stick to. A wet surface, I should say, not gluey. But then I was saying earlier before I came on air when we were checking the picture, how messy my workroom was. So, but in a way, you've benefited from the messiness today because this would normally have been packed away in a crate and you wouldn't have seen it. So you can kind of, oh, I've got my hands in front of you. You can ease it into the shape you want. Now, if you're doing this, if you end up doing this, it is even more important that you varnish it because obviously that will just peel straight off. I'm going to have a word about varnish in a minute when I'm getting quite carried away now. I'm enjoying this. That's not really stuck very well. It's very delicate and now it's all sticking to my sweaty fingers as well. But it's like glue. Anyway, let's just brush that off and leave it on the surface. I'll not do any more because I'm going to end up with gilded fingers now. All the little bits as well, like this. Obviously, you're not going to put them back in the pack, but collect them in a little pot and then use them again. I'll just tip them onto the surface. I want to bring it up close. I don't know whether you can see that catching the light, but the gold bits are there. I'm quite pleased with that. So that's that bit. I mean, obviously you will carry on and finish all of these colours. I might just, I've got another coaster here that is blank. This is sort of its unpainted, this is its primed stage. So this is just the emulsion paint, but I just thought I would show you how to use the Sharpies. I'm going to use a slightly different stencil. And I'm just going to use the middle bit of it, which is like a rose, and I'm going to put right in the centre. So we'll go with the gold. Just try to centre it up. And you just do that. I mean, I don't know whether this is even going to work because I've not tried it, but I'm going to go over the outer bit of the stencil, sort of rose shape in this gold. You're probably better going into the shapes of the stencils rather than before we stippled, but I'm not sure that this ink would get all the way through if we stippled, but it's easy enough because it's got a narrow tip, the marker pen to just follow the grooves in the stencil. So if you don't have acrylic paints, but you do have some marker pens, you can still do this without any sort of expense of buying new equipment. Although at heart, crafters always want to buy something new. Well, I do. I'm attracted by shiny things. So if I see something new, it's something I want to do. Right, so I think that's more or less covered it. If we peel it back, you can see the pattern. Now, if you wanted to do all of this, obviously don't peel it back till you're finished. But even that is quite attractive. You could put something else in the middle, a different design. But I think you can see that these stencils work quite well. If you had the paper doily with the solid center, you could just do the section that is outside of the solid center, so that you had this in the middle, and then you could put something else in the middle. Even if, I mean, I'm just looking at this and ideas are springing to mind of maybe like putting a clear sticker with a phrase or a, you know, sort of motivational phrase in the middle, something, anything, or welcome to summer. It looks a bit like a sunflower. Really quite pleased with that. I'm glad we did that. So we've got quite a selection going on here. So I'm just going to turn the camera up because I want to talk to you a bit about varnishing. Now, ideally, a waterproof varnish is the best. I find yacht varnish in a tin is good, but if you don't want to buy a whole tin, or you want something that you might reuse again and again, you can buy in the similar to the craft acrylics, you can buy varnish in the same size. There's two sizes here. That's the satin one, so that's got like a satin sheen, and this is a gloss one. So you would get a glossy finish. It depends what you want, and again, you just use them like you would a paint. I'm gonna show you. I'll get it. Oh, now I've got gold leaf everywhere. I'll get my other wash brush. The acrylic varnish, the beauty of the acrylic varnish is, again, it's water soluble, so you can put it on wash brushes. So let's go with the gloss one. Put a generous amount. Oh, you can't see, can you? I'll turn you back down again. But again, just the same as if we were painting, because these stand upright. I need to. Oh, that's not. Or is it? It says gloss varnish. Let me just test that. I might be white. Oh no, it's coming up clear. Just looks white. And you would just stroke it across. And try and get it quite even. And you would put several coats on. So those are ones you paint on. So you can either buy yacht varnish, which is for wood, and it dries clear and it's waterproof, or you can use an acrylic varnish, but again, it's not going to be very waterproof. It will be to a certain extent. It's more used for covering decoupage and things like that. But you can get enamel varnishes in sprays, craft enamel, and that one's a modelling enamel. And again, I'm not sure whether these are, that one's a satin and that one's a gloss. So you could spray them, several coats again, do it outside if you can, or in a well ventilated space. I usually go in the garage and open the garage door if I'm, you know, if it's wet outside or very windy. You don't want to be doing it when it's very windy. So those are your varnishing options. If it's just going to be decorative, you could just, you know, not varnish it, but I would recommend that at least you give it a coat of an acrylic varnish, if nothing else. Now, as I say, all of this can be washed now. I'm going to finish these off so that I can use them. Let me turn you back up. I hope you've enjoyed this session. I must admit it's something I've quite enjoyed, and the happy accident of getting the proper stencils when I thought I was buying. I thought they were a bit expensive for doilies, but I find if you're looking for, I mean, the doilies you can buy in the shops, they're usually pretty much the same design. But I thought, oh, that's, doilies that are different designs, so maybe that's why they're anyway. It doesn't matter the story. It's a very long and boring story. But anyway, it was a happy accident getting those instead. So that's me finished. I think I'm back in a couple of weeks. My next session is going to be on key rings and bag charms. I'm going to use all sorts of different materials for that: yarn, fabric, ribbons, beads. Nice summery designs that you can just, hang off your lovely beach bag when you're on holiday. And big enough to find your keys in your bag when you're looking for it. So thanks very much for joining me. I hope you've enjoyed it. Leave me lots of feedback. I can see quite a few of you ended up watching. Funnily enough, Kat's hit the nail on the head about crafting. Buying crafting supplies and using crafting supplies are two different things, which is absolutely true. Okay then, so thanks for joining me, and I hope you've enjoyed it, and I shall see you soon.